sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. Well, now wait a minute.
Okay. I'm going to be making this video. It's going to be in relation to Wikipedia and the Democratic Party and issues going on with them right now, waging a propaganda war where they're trying to change the history of our country. This video is, I guess most people who personally know me know for a long time I've always been involved with trying to do my part to share the truth about history and get the truth out there and make things known. And this video I'm going to kind of touch on base with something that happened to me back in, I believe it was like 2016. And it's in relation to the very issues we're facing today with the Democratic Party, corrupting our history of our nation and putting out propaganda to mislead the posterity of our nation, our children, our future, to believe things about America that just aren't true. And they're trying to hijack our nation, and we need to wake up to the reality of what's going on and the true threat that it holds to our future for our children, because we just can't allow this to keep going on the way it is. It's just horrible. But we're gonna jump into this here. I'm gonna show you something real quick here. This right here is Wikipedia, and I'm gonna try to pull it up real big so you can see it here. As you can see up here in this area where the arrow is moving, you can see that. See that arrow up there, up at the top here on the right. This is my Wikipedia where I'm signed in right now. The only problem is, and if you look, and the reason I'm pointing this out, my Wikipedia name is James 196640. And that was because in 2006, when I was 40 years old, is when I created my Wikipedia account to be able to input history, create pages, and edit pages, and add to pages facts about the history of things being said on Wikipedia. And for 10 years, I was a very active participant in adding to the history of Wikipedia, putting in facts, transferring links into the Federal Archives building about American history, and what have you. Over the 10-year period from 2006 to 2016, I never, ever had an issue with Wikipedia. But in 2016, Wikipedia had sent me this notice. Here you see in 2016, it says, "Hello and welcome to Wikipedia. You appear to be repeatedly reverting or undoing other editors." Now, this started when I started to update information about the truth of the Islamic culture and religion in its state of terrorism on Muslim pages, and as well I started to correct issues on American historic pages in relation to that of our true founding form of government as a republic. The Democrats in 2016 had started to try and change the names of political parties. This is, they for a long time have their standing about the so-called party switch that took place. They have several different stories where they depict that this party switch happened with first FDR in the 1930s, which that gets debunked very easy when you realize that FDR tried to appoint Hugo Black, a Ku Klux Klan member, to the Supreme Court. Well, then they jump all the way up to Lyndon B. Johnson, who was like one of the most racist presidents of the Democratic Party in modern history, and also was a member of the Ku Klux Klan out of Texas, which evidence of facts proves. Then they try to jump into like that it happened during the Nixon election with Lyndon B. Johnson. They don't tell you about the big corruption that took place, similar to that of the corruption of what took place with Donald Trump in the 2020 elections, and how they did it back in the time with Lyndon B. Johnson is the same way of what they didn't think about. I think they probably would have done it with Hillary Clinton to make sure she won, but they thought she had the election in a bag, but she didn't. They made sure with Joe Biden, they used every trick in their hat to make sure Joe Biden won the election in 2020, which I'm sorry, if anybody actually believes that Joe Biden won that election, in my opinion, you're a fool. But that's my opinion, okay? That's just my view. But anyway, here, I'm going to show you right here. It says here, they restricted me from editing any pages. I have this right here, the difference between versions. Right here was my page. You can see my username. This is back from July of 2016. That was the last I was able to do any editing after 10 years of being a Wikipedia editor and contributor to the history on Wikipedia. Following this, I had wrote to the founders of Wikipedia, the creators of it, multiple emails and what have you. And sadly, it took all the way to 2021 before the founders of Wikipedia, I guess, actually had considered looking into the matter. And we can see that right here. I'm just showing more of this with Wikipedia. This right here is Jim Wales, one of the founders of Wikipedia. I just want to show you real quick something, and what we're getting to is the point of the Democrats' corruption. And here's Lawrence Sanger. He's the other founder of it. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that the left has taken over Wikipedia and stripped it of neutrality, says co-creators. Right? This is the founders themselves of Wikipedia are acknowledging Wikipedia co-founder, I no longer trust the website I created. This is from him himself. This is a story that came out in 2021, which was right after Biden's election. Like I said, it was way too late at that point. I had been suspended already for 4 years, and still I'm able to log into my account, but I haven't been able to, and I don't even attempt to edit the truth into any of the sites, because if I do, it becomes very apparent what this article is saying is very, very true. Wikipedia, as like now Britannica as well, are very heavily infiltrated by that of left-leaning Democrats, and they are in full control of manipulating the history and the stories within these sites, and they're changing our American history. And they are literally trying to flip the coin here and make themselves out to be the Republicans, and the Republicans out to be the Democrats. And they're doing it throughout corrupt history. It's just amazing. And they're trying to incorporate the Democratic Party as if the Democratic Party was a part of the founding of the United States of America, which is a blatant right-out lie. With that said, I want to just, we're going to go through some history here, and I think it's very important that we all understand right here, the founders of Wikipedia themselves have admitted that, the site is not trustworthy. They no longer themselves believe in the site. They themselves are recognizing that the Democrats have flipped the media, and as well they've done it on Britannica, which we're going to go through right here. You can see, and this is where I'm going to point out exactly what the issue is. I'm going to go back to the full page here where you can see this clear, because this is amazing, and this has been going on since the time of 2016. This was one of the issues that I started raising in 2016 that resulted in my Wikipedia editing privileges being removed. When I had first seen on some of the sites in relation to Cassius Marcellus Clay and Thomas Jefferson, who Thomas Jefferson and James Madison founded the Republican Party in 1789. Actually, 1789. And I had seen on their site that the name title had been changed from the Republican Party to what you're seeing up here. If you're looking right here, you can see that it says the Democratic Republican Party. Now, when you read here, the Democratic Republican Party, first opposition political party in the United States, organized in 1792. It was actually 1789, but by James Madison. It was a Republican Party. And they're trying to say that it's the Democratic Republican Party. Now, I got news for you. I've been studying world history and the United States history all my life, since I was a young kid. And there's never anywhere in the archives of our history ever said to be a Democratic Republican Party back in the time of our founding, or any time in our history up until now, with Wikipedia's corrupt attempt to associate the Republican Party as a Democratic Party. And I'm going to show and prove that to you by the facts. Right here again, you see, this here is, again, the Democratic Republican Party, right? And it has down here the Federalist and the Republican Party. Jefferson and the colleagues formed the Republican Party. Here it says it. But up here they're referring to it as the Republican Party. James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, as the founders of the Democratic Republican Party. This right here is total idiocy. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there is so much evidence in history that Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and all our founding fathers wanted nothing to do with a democratic form of government, nor a democratic state, nor a democratic democracy. And they made this very, very clear, and they left us a very clear written history of their understanding and views on this that are evident to the facts of what I'm about to show you. That there was no Democratic Republican Party. This is made up by the Democrats. The Federalist Party is what it speaks of, and I want to just touch down here. Jefferson and his colleagues formed the Republican Party in the early 1790s. By 1795, the Federalists had become a party in name as well. Okay, so when we have to ask ourselves, who are these? What is going on? Most, if you're familiar with history, know that George Washington was totally opposed to any kind of political parties. He believed that if you allowed for political parties, you allowed for division in the nation. Our nation was founded as a single-party, single-form government, of a Republican form of government only. And that's what we founded this nation as, and that's what we intended for this nation to be. To understand what a republic is, I just want to touch on here too, just so you understand when we get into the facts. We have to look at who drafted and founded who founded the Republican Party and who drafted the Constitution. James Madison is one who is considered to be the father of the Constitution. He did most of the drafting of the Constitution along with Madison Alexander Hamilton and John Jay. So all of our founding fathers took part in the development of the forming the Constitution and writing it out. James Madison, along with Hamilton, they had a long series of what was known as the Federalist Papers, which we were like a federation before we formed our Constitution as the United States with the Constitution itself. And we have what's known as the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers example the opinions of our founders to what the difference between Republican and Democratic states are. And they make it very clear, their views and opinion. But I just want to make out the point here, you understand, James Madison is the father of the United States Constitution. And in drafting the United States Constitution, we can see in the Federalist Paper number 10 by James Madison. If you want, I'm going to include links, of course, to all this stuff. The Federalist Paper number 10 is a very important Federalist paper because in this, let's see if I can search here and just give you an example. Okay, you see here in this paper, I'm going to read one paragraph here. We're going to go to the, I'm going to fade out to the big page so you can see this. Hopefully you can see it. What it says here is, to other point of difference is the greater number of citizens and extent of territory which may be brought within the compass of Republican than of Democratic government. And it is this circumstance principally which renders fictitious combinations less to be dreaded in the former. Now this is all in Federalist Paper number 10. And the other thing I want to talk about is a republic, which you can see here. The paper is loaded with republic. Okay? And there's a reason for that because that's what we are. You know, our Pledge of Allegiance, when we say it, I know the Democrats want the Pledge of Allegiance removed, and they want it removed for this purpose. The Pledge of Allegiance is, we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Now, why anybody would oppose that pledge, I don't understand. I really can't. And if you oppose that pledge, well, maybe you ought to leave America, because obviously if you oppose that, you don't belong here. But, this is what a republic is. A republic is a body of one people of all equal. That's what a republic is. Now, a constitutional republic is what we are. A constitutional republic is that body of one people of all equal, self-governing, and it's a government of the people, for the people, by the people. Okay? And that's what we establish it as. Our government and our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, was we declare as we the people our right to alter, amend, or abolish any form of government we consent to. We are the head authority over all government in our nation, as we declare in our Declaration of Independence. Following our Declaration of Independence, we have the Constitution. The Constitution is the draft out of what we, the American people, have consented to allow for a government to exist. We set the terms, the conditions, we grant them the authorities and the powers that we consent to them having, as long as they conform to the Constitution, of which clearly we require that they take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution above all things, because it's the how could you say it? It's the bedrock of their own being. Meaning that if anybody in the government, any senator, representative, president, whoever, acts outside of the consented authority and powers that we the people consent to them, or they're in contempt of them, they lose their immunities and their privileges of power. This includes all branches of government, from local police to state police to sheriff's departments to those of the National Guard, anyone within the president, any policing forces or anything. If they act outside or in abuse of the constitutional rights that we protect upon ourselves, within the rights that we declare, at the moment they do that, they're in contempt of their own oath to the Constitution, and their powers of authority are then suspended at that very moment. Pretty much like what I'm saying, and this is a fact, and this is the way it used to be, and it should still be. If a cop, a police officer of any level, state, sheriff's office, city police, whatever, if he intentionally or knowingly, in front of witnessing by the people, takes an action against a citizen of this country in a way that it's clear he's violating their rights, their constitutionally protected rights, at that moment, that officer loses, by contempt, his power of policing. He is now just a monkey in a uniform the moment he violates the rights of an American citizen. That citizen, as it used to be, has a right to defend himself against that violation. So it used to be. Now we have more of like a Gestapo police state, and where the police are the almighty, and you can't do anything, even if they're violating your rights, you just have to stand there and take it. This is kind of like we're falling back into what would be old school Nazis from 1930s with the Gestapo and the brown coats, and the brown shirts. It's just incredible. But Federalist Paper number 10 is an important paper, because in this paper, James Madison, the founder of our Constitution, defines what a Republican form of government is and what the difference is between a Republican form of government and a Democratic form of government. So it's very important to take the time to read this, because and then too, here I want to put in about democracy. This is where, like, everybody today, we hear this constantly now on the news, and we see it all the time in print. America's democracy, America's democracy. And today you have many of historians and said to be scientists of history who say America is a democracy, and I get it how they twist the words. They're Democrats, so they're very keen in their ability to lie. And when you look at what a democracy is, a democracy does have the principle of allowing the people to vote, okay, in a democracy. But the difference between a democracy, a pure democracy, and that of a republic, constitutional republic of a self-governing people, is huge. And the difference is this. In a pure democracy, of a democratic democracy state, the self-proclaimed authorities of government themselves, they are the ones who give the people the pool of people they will vote for. So you will be voting in the people that those in power have picked for you to vote for. And then once you vote them in, you as the people no longer have a say. You're subject to whatever they determine is best for you. Now, in a constitutional republic, we the American people do not give up our power to the government once we elect them. The government is required to act within good standing and within the boundaries as we set by the Constitution, their limits of power. If they act outside of those limits of power, or they abuse those powers, we the people have the right to strip it from them. And they don't get to do what they want to do. The problem is that we as Americans have lost the Department of Education in this country. I got news for you right now. Any history teacher within the last 25 years is a disgrace in this country, because you have failed this nation greatly. You are a traitor to this nation because you failed greatly in teaching the truth about American history. And that's self-evident by the chaotic mess that we're in with all the division going on this day about the false information about American history that these people have been indoctrinating our posterity with. But anyway, I just want to get here. From this view of the subject, it may be concluded that a pure democracy, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens who assemble and administer the government in person, can admit no cure for the mistress of factions. A common passion for interest will in almost every case be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert result from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements of sacrifice. The weaker party are an obnoxious individual. Hence it is that such democracies have ever been speculative of turbulence, and conditions have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property. So what he's saying is like, and this is the truth, understand, under a pure state of democracy in a democratic state, the people, you get the vote, yeah, okay, they give you the pool who you're going to vote for. Then once you elect them, all decisions are made by them on a majority basis without your input. You don't have any say after that. And the entire, if you have a pure democratic democracy, the entire population of the people can be opposed to what the government's doing. But it doesn't matter. If the majority of the government body itself agrees this is what should be done, that's what's getting done. In a constitutional republic, that's not the case. So there is a big major difference that we all have to consider and understand there between what a constitutional republic is and what a pure democratic democracy is. And it's very important we understand this. Another important thing right here is Federalist Paper number 39. Again, written by James Madison, the father of our Constitution. This right here is where James Madison defines a constitutional Republican form of government. So understand, we have the facts. And the Republican government, and as you can see, when you look like in these things here, I'm going to try to see if I can, give me 1 second here. In this right here, if you try to find the word Democrat, it doesn't exist. Democracy doesn't exist. In James Madison's Federalist Paper number 39, it's only strictly about a Republican government. Now, I myself have read letters between Madison, Washington, Jefferson, John Jay, and many of the founding fathers in relation to a Republican government. It was in John Jay's opinion that nowhere in our Constitution should we include the words democracy, democratic, or Democrat. It was intentional that these words were placed nowhere within the United States Constitution or any of its amendments. And you can search the entire Constitution and you will not find the word Democrat, Democratic, or democracy anywhere in the United States Constitution. And there's a reason for that. And like I say, this is an important thing. I'm just putting this information out for you. James Madison's Federalist Paper 39, Republican government. You want to read these things. You want to know your place as an American. These are very critical things, and these also prove my point of what I'm saying. The Constitution, as I said, was ratified in 1788. Okay, so we know that. Now, here's an important point. The reason why I'm pointing that out. 1788, we ratified the Constitution. The primary father of the Constitution was James Madison. Federalist Paper number 10 and 39 define what the difference. Federalist Paper number 10 defines the difference between that of a democracy and a constitutional republic. And it explains what a democracy is, a pure democratic state democracy is, a democratic form of government is, and then it explains what a constitutional republic and a republican form of government is in Federalist Paper number 10. And it clearly defines the difference between them, so you understand that America is not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. There's no question. The facts make this undisputably fact. The only reason that people are starting to believe this is because, like I say, when you look at the Democrats and their lies, we see what the Democrats are doing. They're adding on Democratic Republic here. They're changing history. Now that they're in the White House and they have the access, and this is going through all the federal archives and everything, it's scary, people, what is going on. And we need to, as a people, start stepping up and holding people accountable and making sure that these errors and these propagated lies are changed back to the facts of truth. It's very, very important that we do that as the American people. Now, the founding fathers of our nation, this is from our Constitution. If we want to know what form of government is the United States and what does the Constitution itself consent to, all we have to do is look at Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. This is Article 4 down here in the purple. I'm going to fade over to the big screen so you can see this right here. And you can see Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Now, I will challenge any Democrat out there to tell me where in the Constitution does it consent to or authorize for a democratic state or a democratic form of government. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't exist in the Constitution. But you will find, and as is clear, you will find that every state in this union of the United States, under its Constitution, under the founding principles of what we are as a constitutional republic, only consent to that and guarantee that of a republican form of government, not a democratic democracy. And this is dangerous for us to even allow these people to do what they're doing in the way they're twisting it. And this is actually a cause of what I'm going to continue trying to make videos and educate people, make you aware of the things. I know these things, and it's not my opinion. I'm showing you the facts so you can make an informed decision by the facts. And hopefully take your place as an American, review these facts, and then step up and do something about it. Start writing letters to your congressman, because even the Republican Party that exists today is ignorant to the reality. And it's sad when I look at America and I consider the truth of what is going on in America in relation to so much of the youth right now joining the Democratic Party. And it's all on false pretense. It's all on the basis of lies, propagated lies and twisted history. These kids are being deceived. And understand this, we can't just attack the public of the Democrats. These are the children of Americans, and it's in a way, with today's access to information, I can't understand how anyone could be so ignorant to the reality of the truth of our nation, its history, and its founding principles. But it's clear, these children, these kids, they just trust what they're being told, and they don't take the time to fact check out things. And so they just believe what they're being told. As you know, like with Joe Biden, he has that saying where he says, Democrats choose truth over facts. And what they mean by that is their version of the truth. And they don't want you to look at the facts, because if you look at the facts, you're going to find out most of what the Democratic Party says, or their heads say, is lies. Their version of the truth is lies. And the evidence is clear and it's undisputable. But you can see here in Article 4, Section 4, that the Constitution of the United States of America, since 1788, the time it was ratified, because this was in there, guarantees a republican form of government to every United States citizen. We are guaranteed a republican form of government, not a democratic democracy. So people need to understand this fact of truth, because if you choose to represent the Democratic Party, you're in violation of the Constitution. Now, either you're an American and you adhere to the Constitution and its Republican form of government, which I can't understand why any American would object to a Republican form of government. With today, it's kind of hard. Real quick before we go, I'm just going to give you an example of why it can get hard. You know, today, Iran's our enemy, right? This is most of the youth today, you kids today, you don't understand it. You know, one time Iran was our ally. They were called Mini America. They had a constitution near verbatim to ours. That's why they are known as the Republic of Iran. But the problem is this. Iran, under the democratic authority of Jimmy Carter, the Democratic president in 1978, he allowed the Shah of Iran, our ally at the time, to be overthrown by the Islamic States. And he did nothing to defend the Iranian people. And it was a sad thing because they had a constitution near verbatim to the United States, except they were missing one critical and very important amendment. They had no right to keep and bear arms. So they were an unarmed people. And it was very easy in 1978 for the Muslims to invade their country and overthrow them while the Shah of Iran was out of the country. And we should have, as their ally, moved in to defend them and keep them a free republic, as constitutional republic is what they were. But Jimmy Carter, the Democrats, are allied, as it's evident today in their party, that they're filled with Muslims. They're allied with the Muslims, which history shows there's a reason to that. It goes back all the way back to the point of slavery, being that the Islamic Muslims are truly the founders of the black African slave trade. And history shows this to be a fact. This is not my opinion. And the majority of slaves purchased by the Democrats at the time, they were the majority of the slaveholders. And they bought their slaves, mostly all of them. 98% of the slaves imported in the transatlantic slave trade were slaves purchased from the Islamic Muslims. They controlled the black African slave trade. This is a fact. So these people have been in long alliances. The Muslims were the Democrats' ally during the Revolutionary War. They were their ally during World War, the Second Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, which led to, we had a war against, our first war as an independent nation against another nation was in 1804 with the first Barbary War with the Islamic States and the Muslims. And then again, following the War of 1812, we entered our second war with the Islamic Muslims. Okay, so understand, they've always been our enemies and they've always been allied to our enemies. And the Democrats have always been the enemies within. Before they were the Democratic Party, which we'll get into, they were known as the British Loyalists. They were the majority of the slaveholders in our nation. Prior to the Revolutionary War, they were known as the Kingsmen. The kings of Great Britain would build them large mansions and send them over here to live with their families. And what they would do is they would manage the slave labor on the developing large plantations in the southern region for the king's wealth to harvest up and export this stuff out for the king to sell abroad, like cotton and tobacco and what have you, for his own wealth. And then after the Revolutionary War, the Tory Kingsmen, they claimed the plantations as their own property, and along with it, they claimed the slaves as their property, and they became the largest landholders and the largest majority slaveholders in the newly developing nation of the United States of America. This is a fact. And this is what people got to understand. Now, when we look here, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison are who founded the Republican Party in 1789. And when they founded the Republican Party, this was the only known party that existed in that time, which I'm going to present evidence of facts with you. And I remember, as a kid, going to the Federal Archives. I used to love to go to the Federal Archives and be able to go there and pull out the old newspapers from the founding time and just read the newspapers. Now, one thing about the founding times of our country, since the ratification in 1788 of the Constitution, following that forward, anytime somebody referred to a citizen politically, they referred to them as a Republican. No joke. Anytime anybody wrote an article about somebody and they were making a political statement, they referred to them as a Republican, because all Americans were Republicans. The only people that existed in this country that weren't Republicans were the Democratic Tory loyalists of the southern slave states, who rebelled against the United States, who were opposed to the Constitution, who were opposed to the War of Independence, who have been, and still, even after the War of Independence, are waging all the way to this day, because they're now the Democrats, waging civil upset and war on us in an attempt to overthrow our country. And this has been going on since the founding of our nation with these people. We have to wake up and face reality, because I assure you, when you look at something like Great Britain, this is a monarchy of elitist scumbags who think they're better than everybody in Great Britain. The kings and the rulers over there, King Charles, he thinks he's better than everybody in his royal bloodline family. And they have been in power under that assumption of their elitist rule now for over 2,000 years. Think about that, over 2,000 years. The kings of Saudi Arabia have been in power for almost 4,000 years. The Islamic states have now, their kings, like the king and the Shah of Iran and what have you now, they have been in power for over 1,400 years. China has a history in its royal monarchy of dictatorship that dates back almost 8,000 years. America, the United States, our country, understand people, just 248 years ago, the world was a whole different place. Because that's all America is old. We're only 248 years new in this world. And if you think that these people, after thousands of years ruling as they've been ruling, are going to quit ruling because we rose our nation up, you're wrong. And believe me, it's their goal to erase us from history if they can. And they're gradually doing it, and like fools, we're letting it go on. But it's so important that people come to reality of how important it is that you need to understand the truth of our history. Our founders pushed on this, but it's a sad situation with the condition it is today. But here you can see here, I have this right here. This is on the election of 1804. This right here is the election poster of Thomas Jefferson in 1804. And I bring this up because, like I say, I want you to understand and be aware that because there's a myth by the Democrats that, one, they try to present themselves as being the first political party of establishment in our nation. This is a lie. That's all they ever do is lie. They try to say that the Republican Party actually wasn't founded until 1854 in Tennessee. That's a lie. It's another big lie. And they try to claim, and one thing they do tell the truth about, their form of government is the longest standing form of government known in human history. And that's because all totalitarian regimes, dictators, supreme rulers, enslavers, and evil scumbags of the world's governments right now all rule under democratic democracies. Okay, and that's what they've always ruled under, democratic democracies. And where the self-proclaimed elitist scum of these parties or these political establishments of nations self-proclaim their position of power, and they present to the people who they have to elect, which is usually that of their own. So no matter what, you're voting for who they want, and then once you elect them, you no longer have a say. That's their democratic democracy. And we have that now going on in the United States. The Democrats do not adhere to a republic form of government. They do not adhere to that of the Republican process of the government as we establish it, which when you read all the Federalist Papers and the letters between Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, John Hancock, and our founders, you get the understanding of what exactly the Constitution is saying and what is expected of it in its form of government that we, the American people, have consented to, which I'll touch on a little bit as we go forward. But right now, let's finish this out. I want to show you a bigger image of what this is so we can look at this and read this out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade over to the large screen of it so we can see this clearly. So you see here, Republicans, turn out, and save your country from ruin. This is Thomas Jefferson in 1804, his campaign poster. So understand, at this time, it's pretty clear there was a Republican Party, and in fact, all true Americans were known as Republicans. There was also a Federalist Party that had been developing, and there was also at this time the start of a Whig Party. These parties were, initiated and influenced by that of what was known as the Loyalists, the British Loyalists, the Tory slave state holders, who I told you were against America. They wanted to present all these other fascist-type parties in a sense to try and divide America. And this is why Jefferson at this time has to make a warning to the people, and he makes them aware again. Our founding fathers, during the initial of the founding of our country, were able to do this because they were the ones who founded it. They understood the threat. So we read this here: turn out, and save your country from ruin. From an emperor, from a king, from an iron grasp of a British Tory faction, an imprinciple bandito of British speculators, the hireling tools and mercenaries of His Majesty King George, have thrown our city and diffused the poison of principles among us. Down with the Tories, down with the British fascists. You see this? You see, he's warning, this is not who we want. And he's also exposing them in this time to who they are. They're the Whigs. They're now infiltrated very heavy into the Federalist Party. which was originally Hamilton's stand on it. Hamilton wrote as well Federalist Papers, but the Tory had infiltrated the Federalist Party, and they had been corrupting it now for a while. Mostly, they were against the abolishment of slavery. Most people don't know. They think the Civil War was where slavery gets abolished, but in truth, upon us claiming our independence, the first state to abolish slavery was the state of Vermont. By the time of the Civil War, we had 19 free states and 15 slave states. The slave states were controlled by the Democratic Party, and they were the same. The Democratic Party was founded by that of the British Loyalist Tory. So you need to understand that. That's who these people are, and they still are to this day, trust me. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand that reality. So before they have it in their powers to enslave you and reduce your families to distress by heavy taxation, Republicans want no tribute liars. They want no ship ocean liars. They want no refuge kings for lords. They want no barrack to lord it over them. They want no Jones for senator who fought with the British against the Americans in the time of war. But they want in their place such men as Jefferson and Clinton, who were men who fought in the Revolutionary War for our independence. And this is what our founders in this time here with Thomas Jefferson is trying to inform the posterity, the youth of our nation. Be aware that we have enemies within. And that's who these enemies are, the British Loyalist Tory. And at this time here, they were infiltrating the Federalist Party, trying to infiltrate the Republican Party, but was very unsuccessful in that attempt. And they were trying to create other parties like the Whig parties, and eventually they do create a party that they succeed with, known as the Democratic Party, but that takes all the way to 1828. So now, as I was saying about, here again, we have Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. Here I have where it's defined by the Supreme Court's rulings, and I'll include this so you can see it, where the Supreme Court itself has broken down the consented to form a government by the Constitution as a republic, and they state in different ways in different cases what that exactly means. I'll include this too so you have that for reference and you can look at it and hopefully get a clear understanding. This right here is where, because today as well, when we hear from the Democrats, like I remember back with my suspension thing when it happened, and some of the back and forth commentary, the fellow who had me suspended was obviously a Democrat. He was the guy who changed, I'll go back so you can see this, he had changed the Wikipedia page to where it read democratic democracy, to what you see here it is, the Democratic Republican Party. And I was arguing back then with it, and I tried to explain to him that there was no such thing as a Democratic Republican Party. Though, you know, the argument, of course, he obviously had more power than me because he was able to, after I had 10 years of being an editor on the site, he pretty much eliminated me, took away my rights and ability to be able to access and make edits and changes after 10 years of doing and contributing much to it. Not only that, he literally had erased everything I had ever done on Wikipedia. It was gone. Just like that, was gone. And changed back, he had, and it's horrible to think how much of the facts of evidence and time I put in at that time to what was there to correct the lies being told by the Democrats over that 10-year period. And now it's all been gone. So anybody who now, like these kids today, everything's online. They trust and they believe that what they're being told is the truth. But as you can see, even by the very founders themselves, right here in this story, this is, the left has taken over Wikipedia and stripped it of neutrality, says co-creator. And he says here, Wikipedia co-founder, I no longer trust the website I created. And he's right. He's aware of this fact now. Sadly, it's come too late in the game. The corruption now is widespread abroad. It's, like I said, out throughout Britannica. Everywhere you look, if you search right now for the Republican Party of Jefferson and Madison, everywhere you look now, even Google is now on board with corrupting the posterity of our nation with lies, because it comes up everywhere as the Democratic Republican Party. It's disgraceful that we're allowing this kind of corruption to take place. Okay, but here we have, like I say again, this is I'll include this here so you can see, like here they even mentioned Federalist Paper 39. James Madison emphasized popular sovereignty and majoritarianism control as among the distinctive characters of the Republican form. And it has things in here about from that Federalist Paper of what Madison said. So it's important that we understand these truths. Thomas Jefferson, I'm pointing out here because, like I say, the argument the fellow made back then was that Jefferson was opposed to the Constitution and opposed to a Republican. This is a lie. And I brought this up here because I wanted to mention this is a letter from Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. They were very close. If you remember, when Thomas Jefferson was, it was James Madison and Thomas Jefferson who founded, both of them became presidents of the United States. They founded the Republican Party. So it's ridiculous to try and lay claim that he was against the Republican form of government. You're talking about a president, and you're talking about the founder and the drafter. Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence. James Madison was a majority drafter of the Constitution itself. Together they collaborated with the other founding fathers to form the Constitution into what it became. There's letters between Madison and Jefferson to intentionally make sure they don't even mention in the Constitution the words democratic, democracy, or Democrat anywhere in it, because they didn't want our posterity to even consider such evil forms of government. But here I want to put in a note here where Jefferson writes Madison, and he says, I have little to fill a letter. I will therefore make up the deficiency by adding a few words on the Constitution proposed by our convention. I like much of the general idea of framing government, which should go on of itself peaceably without needing continual reoccurrence to the state legislature. I like the origination of the government into legislative, judiciary, and executive. I like the powers given the legislator and to levy taxes, and for the reason of solely approval of the greater house being chosen by the people directly. So as you understand, he just said, I am totally in favor, in his own letter, of the Constitution in its form and its principle and its order of the branches. Okay? So for the Democrats to try and assert that Thomas Jefferson was not in favor of these things, or a Republican form of government, and somehow try to assert that he was a Democrat, in light of the evidence of facts to so many different things I've already shown you that clearly show Jefferson was a Republican, okay? He was a very strong and stern Republican, and so is James Madison. It's ridiculous the lies these Democrats are propagating into our posterity these days. Now, in here, I went ahead. Now, this is a library. The Library of Congress has digitalized many of the old newspapers. I've actually read many of these papers right there at the Federal Archives when I was younger. And now you have the ability to go there. As you can see here on their site, what I've done here is I've collected from different dates. These dates is 1803, 1795, 1795, 1802, 1803, 1802, 1795, 1795. These were images that I were close to, like I say, 1795, 1788, 89 is where they created the Republican Party. What I said prior was that, whenever speaking of anybody in the United States, I'm not talking about down south in the slave-controlled area by the British Loyalist Tory Democrats. I'm talking about in the United States, in the publications. When I'm referring to anyone of government or political matter, the person being spoken of or the political representative would be called a Republican. These little red marks you see on all these newspaper clippings from these times are where they're speaking about these things. And I'm going to zoom in on one so you can clearly see it. I'm going to go to the big screen so you can clearly see it to get the gist of what I'm speaking of. You can see here Republican ticket, Republican, Republican, Republican. Western District 1, Republican, Republican. This is an important one here because I want to point out Southern District, Republican, Republican. Middle District, Republican, Republican. Eastern District, Republican, Republican. Western District, Republican, Republican. You see, everybody is referred to as a Republican. Whenever anyone in relation to our government or our Constitution. When we look at these papers, here's one from 1795. Again, you see here in the story, as a Republican may profitably have read of the futures only what has been published in the Chronicle. Republican, see, he's speaking of a citizen. Every citizen is referred to as a Republican. Because understand, what a Republican is a member of a republic. And what a republic is a nation of free people who self-govern. And the government itself is that of a government of the people, for the people, by the people. We don't have kings. Our government does not, like the Democrats want to do. When they get in office, they no longer listen to the people. And that's not how it's supposed to be. We notice when you see the Democrats assemble about a bill, or Joe Biden's looking for support, or the Clintons or anybody, when the Democrats are in power and they're looking for support on something of a bill or an executive order they want to, they tell their senators and their representatives how they will vote. They tell them. That's not a republic. That's a democratic democracy, and that's what I'm trying to warn you. This is how it works under a democratic democracy. The leaders, once elected, they're the majority of all decisions being made. The people no longer have a say. You elect your representatives and your senators. Once elected, and they're in the House and in the Congress, the party itself now controls them. And they do as what they're told by the party, not you, the people. You understand? And that's not a republic. That's a democratic, pure democracy. Okay? In a republic, the way it was established in our Constitution is that what they're supposed to do, here's our Constitution consists of a House and a Senate, right? And then we as each state, we elect by our population 2 senators and an X amount of representatives to whatever each of our state has in districts, right? Each state has different numbers or whatever by its population. So, but here's how it's supposed to go. The representatives themselves, when there's an issue that we need to bring to Washington, the representatives in each district are supposed to present the bill or the issue to that of its people who elected them as representatives within that district. And the people are supposed to be clearly informed about what they're going to carry out, and collectively now, this bill is spread out throughout the state's district by all its representatives, presented to the public. We, the people. We review the bill or the issue, and we direct our representative to how we, as that district, in each district of the state, wants to vote on it, or what our view and opinion is that we want stated on it. Now, the representative himself can have his own opinion. If he agrees with or disagrees with, he can state his own opinion. But when he goes to the House, he must represent the people by their opinion in his district, not his own. He can state his own opinion, but he has to vote or he has to favor that of what his district's people said they want. Now, collectively, this is how the Electoral College and everything works. The districts as well, in an election, each district votes, each state gets a certain amount of electoral votes. The way it's supposed to be is that the districts of each state collectively weigh out the balance of a majority by the majority of the districts to what is in favor. So let's say if the majority of them are in favor that they want to have, say, the Republican candidate now, at that point, the entire state's electoral votes go to that candidate when the majority of electors from the districts have chosen who they want to have. They pass that to the senator passes that to the electors themselves. The electors, as we're told today, some people misunderstand, they think, oh, the elector can vote any way he wants. No, that's not true. The elector is obligated to vote by the majority rule of the districts, of which they hand off to the Senate, and the Senate presents the electoral decision of the state to that of the electors, and that's what the elector has to pass his vote as. He does not get to vote however he wishes. That's a lie. He has to vote by the will of the people. We, the people. Okay, and we have to understand these things. We have to get educated on these things and come to face reality and learn. We have to know our place as Americans. We are a self-governing people. We are born with the responsibility and obligation as Americans to uphold, defend, and pursue and keep the values and principles of what we have founded this nation to be for our posterity. When you consider our very Constitution itself, it states in our preamble of the Constitution, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and pay attention, and promote the general welfare and the blessings of liberty unto ourselves and our posterity. We're to preserve for ourselves and our posterity the blessings of liberty. So this means we're obligated as people. We're born with this responsibility as a self-governing people. Each and every one of us as Americans are responsible to preserve those blessings unto ourselves and our posterity, meaning our children. We're to keep this nation as it was originally founded, as the great republic it is. We're obligated. Those people in America who say, oh, I don't get into politics, oh, I don't want to talk about politics. Well, you know what? I guess you have that right. You don't have to. But understand, as an American, you're enjoying the very rights and privileges and immunities that are granted to you by the Constitution, and you're a member of the Republic of these United States. And if you're going to vote, you have to be involved. You have to know your place as an American. You have to understand the truth and the values and principles of who we are as Americans. And if you don't, then don't vote. Don't take part. If you don't know your place, don't take part. It's that simple. And it's sad because, you believe me, your future and your children's future depend on it. Depend on the facts of truth. But I'm going to continue on here real quick. The Republican Party. So now we hear from the Democrats about the Republican Party being founded in 1954, they tell us. This is a propagated lie. In a sense, understand that at the time, America was growing. We were moving and expanding out west. At the time of the founding of the country, we didn't even own Florida. And Louisiana was owned by the French all the way up to Canada. So understand that as we took in new territories, they would become part of the Republic. Like Kentucky, Tennessee, what have you. These places would become Americanized to that of our Republic. And then they would adapt the Republican form of government. Now, we know that we see here, the Republican Party, political party, United States, 1854. This was in 1854, this party was the party of the anti-slavery abolitionists of Kentucky, Tennessee, and moving down now into North and South Carolina areas. As true Americans of the colonies, as now a free nation, we started to expand into these other states that were slaveholding states. We also took our ideology there and wanted slavery abolished, and they didn't agree with it. These states, as it would move, as Americans would move into them, would form Republican parties. Now, in this party here, the Grand Old Party is the one they're speaking of. I believe it was in Kentucky in 1854. It was the first political founding party in Kentucky as a Republican Party. It's known as the Grand Old Party. And they call it the Grand Old Party because it represents that of the Grand Old Party of the true Republican Party of the United States, founded by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, which has been the true founding principal party of who we are as the American people since our nation was founded in 1776. And it's what's guaranteed to every state in the Union by Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution. Now, the Republican Party of the United States here, we read here, this is like, you want to read here, I got to read this because I want to explain to you, with all that I just said to you, which now I'm sure, and with the evidence, you take the time to look it up, you understand what I'm saying, I hope you do, and then I'm going to read this to you. The Republican Party, also known as the GOP Grand Old Party, is one of two major contemporary political parties in the United States. It emerged as the main political rival of the then dominant Democratic Party. Listen to this lie. The then dominant the Democratic Party was founded in 1828. It was not the dominant party of the nation. I've shown you the newspapers of these times and everything. And one, there was no such thing as a Democratic Republican Party. You see here where it says the GOP redirects here for use for 1990 party. You see Democratic Republican Party. They're trying to associate their Democratic Party as a Republican Party. It's disgraceful. Okay, the party was founded in 1854 by anti-slavery activists who opposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, an act which allowed for the potential expansion of chattel slavery into the western territories of Kansas and Nebraska. The United States of America and the Republicans refused to allow any expanded or new added or additional developing states or territories to be allowed to be added as slave territories or states. They had to be added as free states and territories, because the Republicans of the United States of America, since the founding, were opposed to slavery and wanted it abolished. This is a fact. It was the Democrats of the Tory British loyalists who wanted to maintain and keep slavery and expand it. Okay, and that's a fact. Okay, and it was not the Republican Party. There was a Republican Party founded in Kentucky in 1854 as the first political party of Kentucky, when it became a state and a territory of the United States at that time, with opposition to slavery, and they wanted slavery abolished. But the Republican Party, the true Republican Party of the United States, was founded in 1789 by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. And it's the very same political party which exists to this very day as a true Republican Party of the United States. And it's the only party that the Constitution consents to of a Republican form of government. So understand, this is a fact, people. This is not my opinion. The facts are the facts. Now, when we speak about the Republican Party here, we find this. This is something I get a lot of people to say to me, I watch your videos, it's repetitive. And I get that, because a lot of these things come up over and over again, like Cassius Marcellus Clay. Now, and I get it, but understand, like I tell most people who say to me, a lot of your videos and a lot of times I talk to you, it's repetitive, because you know what? The truth does not change. So you're going to hear the same things over and over when it's the truth. Okay, now Cassius Marcellus Clay was a founder of the Republican Party in his home state. And, this was during a time of around that time. He was an abolitionist in the 1850s. He opposed slavery. He was very good friends with Abraham Lincoln. He was part of the whole entire era of the Civil War. He was made ambassador to Russia. And there's a great story about him. And I read this story now. I did a lot of editing back on this truth about Cassius Marcellus Clay. This is the guy Muhammad Ali was named after, and he was an abolitionist. He was a great Republican and a great American. Wikipedia and the editors by the Democratic left have turned the story of Marcellus Cassius Clay into a nightmare, and I can't believe that we're allowing them to get away with doing this. I mean, when these people get in power, this is what they do. They're liars. They're manipulators of the truth. They're just like they're allies of the world with this kind of abuse. But it is what it is, and until we do something to stop it, it's going to remain this way. But Cassius Marcellus Clay was actually a very important role, and he actually, as much as Abraham Lincoln was responsible for us winning the Civil War against the Democrats, the 1860 Civil War, which the Democrats caused and waged on the United States of America in an attempt to overthrow us, to turn us into a slave nation. Cassius Marcellus Clay, the Democrats with their Confederate flag were reaching out to Great Britain and even France, looking for allies to help them overthrow the United States of America. Great Britain had, we knew from spies, and there's letters in the Federal Archives about this, and I'll maybe do a video somewhere in the future to pull up the facts on that. We were aware that Great Britain was considering allying in an attempt to overthrow the United States with the Democrats in the 1860 Civil War. So Abraham Lincoln sent Cassius Marcellus Clay as ambassador to Russia. He went to Russia and got Russia to ally with us, and Russia agreed to ally with us during the Civil War, and they informed Great Britain that if they allied it with the Democrats, that they wouldn't get a ship out of port. Great Britain knew that with the Democrats, they might have been able to beat the United States of America. The Democrats during the Civil War, most people think it was Southern Americans fighting for the Democrats, but it wasn't. It was mostly the French out of Louisiana area and from Canada coming in fighting for the Democrats. This is a lot of things people don't know about the truth. There was not a whole lot of Americans defending, outside of those who were in Texas, the Democratic Party during the Civil War. There's a lot of French soldiers coming in from Canada fighting for the Democratic Party, not Americans. And the facts of truth prove that. But being that Great Britain was not able to help the Democrats was the cause. That's why they hate Russia so much today, because Russia cost them the Civil War. Had Russia not agreed to ally with us, and Great Britain entered the war, well, we might be the Confederate slave states of the Democratic Party today, rather than the constitutional free republic of the United States. That's a fact. So here, anyway, too, like I say, too, a lot of people don't understand that they think that the United States didn't abolish slavery until the 1860 Civil War caused by the Democrats, but this isn't true. The first state to abolish slavery, again, was Vermont in 1777. By the time of 1860, we had 19 free states and territories in the United States and 15 slave states. The free territories of the constitutional free United States was controlled by the Republicans. The Confederate slave states were controlled by the Democrats. This is a fact. And, we had, like, here's a thing that's on Wikipedia. I like the way they do this because you can see here, they transition with time from, the founding of the nation, and what you can see in the blue is the original colony areas in the 1800s and how they were the free states of the free Constitution of the United States abolishing slavery in the progression of time. And you can see in the slave states developing in the South by the French and the British Loyalist Tory Democrats expanding their way out where they allowed slavery. And you can see how divided the nation was between free territories and free states of the United States of America and that of the Confederate slave states of the Democrats. So, I mean, it's pretty evident, Subject. Okay, now, this is another thing. Now we're going to get into something about, if I can find it here. Okay, the Loyalists, real quick. I want it so people understand where the Democrats come from. Prior to the United States claiming independence, we were already a divided nation, as I just showed you on the maps. We had the original colony areas that started in 1620 with William Bradford. And those colony areas north of the original colonies were all free territories. Slavery was not allowed there because we were Christian founded, and as true Puritan Christians, we didn't believe in slavery. We believed that all men are created equal, and we wanted to have that. And it was only in the southern developing plantation areas where the kings of Great Britain would send in his kinsmen. They would have these large mansions built for them on these plantations, and then they would move in and they would manage the slave labor that would harvest up and manage the cropping of the big plantations for the king's wealth in Great Britain. When we claimed independence, those plantations that were being managed by the kingsmen, they claimed those plantations as their own property, and they claimed the slaves as their property. So upon the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, the British loyalists of the kingsmen in the southern plantation districts became some of the largest landholders and the majority slaveholders in the newly developing nation. And also they became the enemies within, because from the very start, they stayed loyal to Great Britain and the kings of Great Britain, who financed them throughout the start of the nation, keeping them as they were, all the way up to the point of the Civil War. And there's a lot of history that shows this fact. And they kept trying to interfere and cause issues to break down and dissolve our country and cause us to fail. And they were pretty good at it. And like I say, they were the ones who by we actually have in 1812, we had the Second Revolutionary War with Great Britain where they attacked us. But most people don't realize that at the same time there was a conspiracy. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was a fact that Aaron Burr, who killed one of our founding fathers, Hamilton was exposing Burr as a traitor to the nation. Burr was seeking an alliance with France to develop a southern territorial nation and then build an army to overthrow the United States of America. Involved in that whole plan was Andrew Jackson, okay? And that's the same Andrew Jackson who would become the first Democratic president in 1828 under the Democratic Party. He was also charged with treason with Aaron Burr. This is during 1812, and then at that time, Britain had made the aggressive move to try and overthrow the United States again, hoping to find the alliance with Burr and Jackson. But the problem there was that they had already formed an alliance with France. And at that time, Britain and France were not really getting along very well. And so, they didn't really want to get involved. They stayed kind of neutral in the attack from Great Britain. And as well, there's records of fact that I remember in the archives, which I'm going to dig to and find those things now. Everything's being digitalized. We have correspondence where we know for a fact that the British Loyalist Tory Democrats of the southern area in 1812 were providing information to Great Britain about what they believed our state of government was. But what they hadn't realized was that by 1812, because of the war with the Barbary Muslims in 1804, Thomas Jefferson had built us up a huge and strong navy, and we also had formed our new division of the military known as the Marines. And our army had greatly expanded as well, and so did our National Homeland Militia. So Britain was misinformed by the Tory Democrats of the southern slave states about the strength of America, and they believed they could come in. It was going to be a walk in the park in 1812 to overthrow us. Well, that turned out to not be true, and it was a very short-lived war where Britain realized their defeat, and they headed back very quickly. But the Loyalists was the cause of all this. And then, like I say, 1776, 1812, conspiracies to attempt to overthrow the nation still by these people. As you can see, time does not erase their goal. Okay, and we're going to progress ahead. We see in 1812, okay, the Loyalists, these are people who formed in 1828 the Democratic Party. So now we're up to 1828. They formed the Democratic Party. The first person to be elected as the first Democratic president is no other than the person who was involved in the treason charges against Aaron Burr back in 1812 under Thomas Jefferson as the president at the time. And Aaron Burr was the vice president at the time because that was different at that time. We didn't have what the president picked him. It was the second runner-up for the majority vote became the vice president. And there was a lot of corruption with the elections at that time as well, caused by the Tory Democrats. They had infiltrated many of the Whig Party at the time, the Federalist Party, and they were manipulating elections at that time through spreading out groups within like social groups that would manipulate societies within towns, counties, and states to try and get them to vote Democrat. They would do it through lies and what have you, and it's been long-standing with the Democrats doing it. We see in 1833 the election of King Andy, Andrew Jackson. They called him King Andy. And that was because he was definitely, actually he was related through birth. But anyway, the Democratic Platform, 1856. These are just things I was looking at. Then we get to the Civil War. Now, it's 1860. So now we're literally 90 years later, and the Democrats now, who are founded out of the British Loyalist Tory, are attempting to, and they don't attempt, they did. They divided the nation, and they formed their own nation, and they drafted their own constitution, established their own military, and waged war on the Republic of the Constitutional Free United States in an attempt to overthrow us and form the Democratic Party's Confederate slave states. This is a fact. 90 years later. Now, we see here, this here is Jefferson Davis, who was the president during the time of the Civil War. We see here, I bring this up because most people aren't aware that Jefferson Davis actually had connections with the royal family. You see, these are all of these people of the founding of the true Democratic Party, and still to this day, the very top heads right now are still the posterity of these people, and they are heir to that of the royal families of Great Britain, King Charles himself today. And as we progress forward, if you take the time to look into, this guy here went to Great Britain. He was looking for Great Britain at the time. They'd seen no benefit for it, but he actually was related as a kingsman. He had heirs who were the kingsmen. And Great Britain respected him for who he was and his long-standing loyalty to them, all the way up 90 years later. And, it's just amazing. Now, the Ku Klux Klan is founded out of the Democratic Party. Most people don't know that the Ku Klux Klan is an ancient order of what's known as the Social Society Knights of the Kings of Great Britain and of Scotland and Ireland. They were an organization that would go in and turn the favor of communities to that of the king. They would go in and they would portray themselves as being like citizens of the community, travelers passing through as common people, what have you, and they would stir up rumors and this, that, and everything to either get opposition or favor for whoever was the king, or whoever the king wanted opposition against. They would go in and stir that up. They were a social, civil, terrorist organization for Great Britain. Now they found themselves establishing here in the United States of America following the Civil War. It was founded by the Confederate Democratic Party's Confederate heads of their military, who formed the Democratic Party, known as the Ku Klux Klan. And like it says here, this is the truth. It was founded by Confederate veterans from Pulaski, Tennessee, to resist federal Reconstruction efforts and maintain white supremacy across the South. Okay, and then now following, I'm jumping a little bit here to go ahead now to the first Democrat to be elected after the Civil War. We find this is Grover Cleveland. And Grover Cleveland from 1885 becomes the president, the first Democratic president. Now, this guy was, again, now this is, people got to understand, Grover Cleveland was of military age during the Civil War. But he lived in my home state, New Jersey. He was a Tory. And this is what people understand. He was a British loyalist. His family was of British royal loyalty of the Kingsmen. And during the whole time, he was always an active loyalist to the Great Britain, attempting to mask himself as a political advocate for the United States. He was an infiltrator. And the truth reveals these things if you take the time to, and do your due diligence. He was actually like, what if you look at, I think I have something here where it talks. Okay, he was elected in a very corrupt election. The Democratic Party, not only at this point did they not only have the Ku Klux Klan terrorist organization, they had another organization known as the Red Shirts, and they had another organization that was known as the White League. And they even had another organization. These were multiple terrorist organizations developed by the Democratic Party to pretty much deter people from voting Republican. And they would like, and then even too, they would threaten and wage terrorist acts against that of the electors of our electoral college members and many state governors, senators, and what have you, and representatives. They would threaten the lives of them and their families. They would go on these raids where they would firebomb Republican communities. And like I say, the Democrats are a long-standing internal civil terrorist organization. That's all they've ever been. That's still what they still are to this day. The White League, right here, we see the White League was a paramilitary group affiliated with the Democratic Party, attacked African American voters at the polls, and it just goes on and on here about what happened. But I'll include these things because most people aren't even aware about the White League. They're not even aware about all these organizations that the Democrats had. Now, the thing with Grover Cleveland I want to speak on was his family tree. Grover Cleveland, now we're in all the way up to the point, like I say, Grover Cleveland is being elected in 1785. So we're nearly 110 years into our nation's development. And who is being elected? Grover Cleveland. And who is Grover Cleveland? He's the guy who founds the White League. What does the White League do? As we progress forward, I'm going to explain to you what they do, but we're going to look here at first who he is. Grover Cleveland was related to Queen Elizabeth. He's the posterity of the Kingsman family. Okay, he is from my home state, New Jersey. Another one, just like Jefferson Davis, and he was, and also too, like Andrew Johnson, who was the Vice President Abraham Lincoln. They were all related to the Tory families of Great Britain. They're Tory loyalists. They're the British Kingsman family heirs. Okay, now I don't have this in here, but most don't realize too that the Democrats had fled the United States upon realizing, not all of them, the major primary heads of the Democratic Party, of the Kingsman families, the heads, the true heads, the power heads, they fled and they went to Brazil, Canada, and Egypt. That's where they fled to. near an estimated, from what we had on records, because there was arrest records for these people, that we know there was warrants that existed. There's a record of a box of warrants that were issued for all of the Tory heads in the Southern Confederate slave states, but an estimated 27,000 of them had fled to either Brazil, Egypt, or Canada, so they couldn't be found in the United States. They were being charged with treason, which later got dismissed because we can't charge people who are not citizens of the United States for treason. You can't commit treason against a country you're not a citizen to. And that's the other thing. People don't realize the Democrats were not citizens of the United States. They were entered into a league of friendship with us, but they never took loyalty to the United States. They never declared citizenship for themselves as citizens, loyal citizens of the United States. They were Confederate Democrats of the British Loyalists. This is what people don't understand. Now, Grover Cleveland, as I'm saying, he was related to Queen Elizabeth. And his family, when you trace it back, was one of the larger families of the Tory holding slave plantations in the southern districts, and it was being controlled by a mansion they also had in the northern colony areas of New Jersey and some in Virginia. You have to do your due diligence to understand the truth of these matters and understand who these people are. But he didn't fight in the Civil War because he was in Jersey. He paid for somebody to take his place in the Civil War. But he was an infiltrator, and he was also a traitor to the United States. There's records after the fact of his elections and his terms as president, where we had interceded, and we have records of the whole plot of him with the Democrats to again attempt to overthrow the United States. He's the first president to serve non-consecutive terms in our country, and both elections that he had were taken by pure corruption of terrorist acts against the electors of our electoral college and that of state representatives and senators, their lives and their families' lives being threatened by the Democrats' Ku Klux Klan, Red Church, and other terrorist organizations that they established, like the White League. We see right here, too, these were Redeemers. This is another one of the Democratic Party's terrorist organizations that took place during the time of Grover Cleveland. Redeemer Democrats is what they are, as you can see here in the article. They're called the Redeemer Democrats. This was another terrorist organization. Collectively, all these organizations would try to infiltrate the government by taking up elected positions or higher positions working within city, county, or state government agencies. They were attempting to try and take control of local police departments, local governments, mayor positions, legislative positions, senator positions, county representative positions, etc. And all these different groups expanded out and tried to take power this way by taking elected positions and hired employed positions within police departments, what have you. And they would protect each other. The Redeemers were another terrorist organization, and they did the same things. They would threaten the lives of people. They would do raids. They would firebomb the homes. They would firebomb black communities. They would do run-throughs with guns and shooting blacks in the black communities. I mean, the Democrats are really a multilateral, organized crime outfit of terrorist organizations, and that's all they've ever been throughout our history. Now, I bring these things up because here during the time of Grover Cleveland in 1884-1885 is the first time noticed in American history that more whites are hung than blacks. And the reason why was the Redeemers and the Red Church and the Klan had gone on a civil waging war across the country, hanging white Republicans to try and deter them from defending the black Americans, and now known as the Freemen, and trying to help in it, because the Republicans would go and stand with rifles and whatever at the voting polls and protect the blacks as they came in to vote, exercising their now rights after the Civil War under the 14th Amendment to be able to vote. And many of the black women as well would come armed, and we would have to stand against. Now, what they would do is, if they seen, they would follow them home, then they would firebomb their house, or they would go in and they would raid the home, kidnap the guy, take him out, and hang him as a warning to other Republicans not to help the now free black Americans. And this is what people understand. When you look at the hanging records, 1885 and 1886, or 1884, 1885 with Grover Cleveland, you can see here it was the first time in history more whites were hung than blacks. And collectively, we can see a consistent rate of that up. We see another spike again during his second term. And eventually, though, we see it kind of die off until there's a revival of what we're going to continue on now. South Carolina's Red Shirts battle plan. Right here is like, this gives an example. Paramilitary groups also emerged in the Southern Carolina district. The Red Shirts, their official battle plan, which called for Democratic clubs armed with rifles and pistols, stated in part, every Democrat must feel honor bound to control the vote of at least one Negro by intimidation, purchase, keeping him away. We must attend every radical meeting. Democrats must go in as large numbers as they can and well armed, behave as first with great courtesy, and as soon as their speakers begin, tell them they are liars and are only trying to mislead the ignorant Negroes. You see, the Democrats have been doing this for a long time. And like I say, it's not my opinion. These are the manifestos that were found, and these are in our federal archives, the records of truth, to what the directives from the Democratic Party to their terrorist organizations like the Red Shirts, all the Red Shirts, the Ku Klux Klan, the Redeemers, all of them, the League of the White League, all these different terrorist organizations, they had the same manifesto of what they had to do and how they would operate. And like the Ku Klux Klan secret order of the former British loyalists, the British Klan of what this is a society that's been around for thousands of years. The kings developed these multis as a way of means of dividing people and causing upset through spreading of rumors and what have you. And as we can see, the Democrats are following procedure of the same thing they've always been doing as the Kingsmen, because it was the Kingsmen who were the organizations of these organizations for Great Britain prior to the United States even being formed. The Ku Klux Klan existed. They used this as a means to divide smaller kingdoms against other smaller kingdoms to cause internal wars between them. And what they would do is they would go and actually warn, like they would have two small kings. They would send in their Redeemer or the Klan organizations. They would act as citizens of each one of the kingdoms, stir up a bunch of lies and rumors, and they would spread the word. And then the leaders of say, Great Britain would go in and tell the king, hey, we heard that such and such in that kingdom are planning on attacking you. Then they would go to that kingdom and say the same thing. So both kings of the smaller kingdoms would be looking at Great Britain's king as the hero who warned them about the attack that was coming. Then the loser of that battle would merge, be taken over by the king who victors on it. That king would give glory to Great Britain for warning them and telling them, and of course, Great Britain emerges as being the hero. You see, this is how the Democrats as well do it. They cause all the chaos and division within our country. They blame the Republicans, who have nothing to do with it. And they say this, everything they're doing, they say the Republicans are doing. So it makes it look like they're warning people about the terrorist acts of what they're claiming the Republicans are going to do when it's them who are doing it. Then when the people see it, they look to them, and that's how they get the favor of people to come to them. They say, look, we told you, and look what happened. And then people are like, oh, you did. And they assume that the Democrats are the good guy when they're not, because they just are ignorant. They don't know the truth. But you can see here, this is a manifesto. It says here, in speeches to Negroes, you must remember that they can only be influenced by their fears, superstitions, and cupidity. Treat them as so to show them you are a superior race and that their natural position is that of subordination to the white man. You see, they're racist, the Democrats. This is their whole thing. And believe me, these organizations strongly are still enforced this very day. And believe me, they are infiltrated throughout our government across this nation to levels and precedents unprecedented known in history. It's getting very, very dangerous. Our nation is on the brink of collapse if we do not wake up to the reality. Now we're entering into the 19th century, in the 1900s. We have the second president to be elected since the Civil War. Again, another president who was present during the Civil War, whose family was of British Tory loyalist descent. Okay, Woodrow Wilson, another, sadly to say, is from my home state, New Jersey. And he was another one. I have his bloodline too, which I did here and read it. You can see the history of him as well. His family's history goes back to that of the Kingsmen who were controlling slave plantations in the South but also owned large mansions that were built for them by the kings of Great Britain as elitist family status in the northern colonies around Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So his descent. Now this guy here, mind you, so we're at 1915 now, right? So we're talking like 156 years into the nation's development. And what do we have in 1915 with Woodrow Wilson, the second Democratic president of the United States? Well, we have the revival of the Ku Klux Klan. That's what Wilson did. The Birth of a Nation revives the Ku Klux Klan. This is under Woodrow Wilson's, and he showed the movie, The Revival of the Ku Klux Klan, in 1915 in the White House with the entire Democratic administration. He said that it was writing history like lightning. Okay, they revived the Ku Klux Klan. As the President of the United States, he gave them free reign to go and do whatever they wanted. So them, the Redeemers, the White Knights, all of them, went on an onslaught civil attack across this country on all black Republican communities. And they slaughtered thousands and thousands of black communities and killed thousands and thousands of free black Americans to deter them from voting and to keep them out of the voting polls and to break their spirit. I mean, what happened under Woodrow Wilson was another civil war, of which, under the goose of World War I, he used executive and political powers to stop anybody from being able to intercede on the slaughter of the black communities across our country. At the time, there was what was known as Black Wall Street. You had wealthy black men hitting oil in Texas. The black communities across our country under Republican administrations were prospering and pursuing their happiness the same as anybody else. The Democrats seemed fit to go ahead and make sure that was put to a stop. The black Republicans as well were dominating in most of the industrial developing jobs in the industrial boom in the northern states. They came in and put a stop to that as well because the Democrats were complaining that the blacks were taking their jobs from them. And as well, they did not like to come up and work in the northern states in the factories and be under the supervision of a black foreman. They just would refuse to take orders from a black man. This caused a lot of problems. That was one of the majority reasons why none of the industrial booming factories of the entrepreneurial Republicans up north wanted to hire the Democrats, because it was always a conflict of an interest with, it was like you couldn't run a business with these people. They just, and then if you had a black, respectable black foreman or something, or supervisor, they just refused to work for them, and they would cause all kind of problems. But Woodrow Wilson in 1915 revived the Ku Klux Klan by showing the Birth of a Nation in the White House. He led the onslaught of American black communities across this nation, letting the Klan have free reign. The Klan, the Redeemers, all of them have free reign to kill and murder at will any and all blacks within any, and destroy. They burned down all the black communities. They killed thousands of white Republicans trying to defend the blacks. White and black Republicans became the slaughterhouse. It was just horrible what happened. Nobody even talks about the whole thing that happened. Here you can see, even in Wikipedia's left-leaning thing, they say here, it was the first motion picture to be screened inside the White House, viewed there by President Woodrow Wilson, his family, and members of his cabinet. So you understand, I mean, like I'm saying, this is like 150 years later, and if you don't realize, like this here is about the red shirts, so you understand their terrorist organization took place during that time. The racial violence in the Red Summers, this was during Woodrow Wilson. Now we have here with this lie of the story of the Great Switch. The Democrats like to say that there was a flop in parties, that the Republicans became the Democrats and the Democrats became Republicans. These people are full of lies. And like I said, with all their terrorist organizations and little groups they have that spread out and they do these things, they spread these lies and people are propagated to believe it because, like they say, they know. Like the Democrats, they just lie and they know a certain amount of people are going to believe the lie when they hear it. And that's all they're counting on. We see here under FDR, they claim under FDR there was the great party switch. Then they later changed that to be from FDR to, believe it or not, Lyndon B. Johnson, who was one of the, again, modern day racist, unbelievable Ku Klux Klan member. But this is a civil rights movement. Race and eligibility began to return to the center of politics in the 1950s, 1960s. They claimed that the Democratic President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law, In the 1964 election, Republican candidate Barry Goldwater publicly opposed the new law, arguing that it expanded the powers of the federal government to a dangerous level. There's a lot of question about Barry Goldwater, and as well at this point, by this level too, people got to understand we had at this point long-standing known of what's called a rhino. A rhino is a Republican in name only. It's a Democrat who runs for a Republican position to give the Democrats an opposition voice in the Republican Party. There are Democrats portraying themselves as Republicans. They also, while acting as Republicans, will usually favor that of anti-American rhetoric, communism, such and such, to try and make the Republicans look as though that's their agenda. But usually it's only the rhinos within the Republican Party that do these things, and usually when they expose themselves like that is when usually they get ousted from the Republican Party and they wind up flipping back and going back to the Democratic Party. They're known as rhinos. You don't see many Dinos, but there are Dinos. Dino's a Democrat name only, and that's what most of the people in America right now that represent this party are. They're Dinos. They're Democrat name only because they don't know nothing. They're ignorant people that never studied the history of our country. They know nothing of the truth of the evil of the Democratic Party, and you know they're in that party by lies and propagated, made-up fantasy stories of illusion by all the Democratic social disruptors. And it's just horrible when you realize the truth of how bad it's gotten. It's just outrageous. But we see here Franklin D. Roosevelt, they first claimed he's the party switch president, that after Woodrow Wilson destroyed all the black communities, killed many Republicans, ran our nation into a depression, now they claim with the welfare state president, he's the civil rights guy. And at this point, our nation's in a horrible state, the Great Depression of 1929. This is the end result of the second president of the Democratic Party, and now the third president, Franklin Theodore Roosevelt. We know Roosevelt gets shot down from being the party switch guy because, well, like this article says, how an ex-KKK member made his way onto the Supreme Court. Mind you this, I'm going to tell you something right now. There's no such thing as an ex-KKK member of the level of this guy. He was like what they call Robert Byrd was a Kugel, who's a recruiter, high-ranking officer of the Ku Klux Klan. They have what's called the Klan Claron. In the Claron, it's very clear that once you reach a certain level, there's only one way out, and that's a bullet to the head. They kill you. You can't get out. You can't change your mind. There's no going away. And Hugo Black was a Kugel, just like Robert Byrd. So he was already to a higher level to where he was now a life-committed member of the Ku Klux Klan. He could not leave. Of course, they'll say they do, of course. But you know what? When you read the Claron of the Ku Klux Klan Order of Rules and Book, and you also look at some of the people who actually did try, you realize they're not playing. They'll hang them, they'll shoot them, they'll kill them. Being Hugo Black lived, obviously he never left the Klan, because you don't get to break the rules and live. That's just the way it is with him. Okay? Now, Hugo Black was appointed by FDR to the Supreme Court. He's the first Ku Klux Klan member to be appointed to the Supreme Court by the Democrats. Okay, as we go forward now, we're jumping ahead. Their second claim to a party switch is Lyndon B. Johnson. This is a joke. Lyndon B. Johnson was the vice president of John F. Kennedy. The election of John F. Kennedy, as well as many other elections, like we see where FDR, Franklin Theodore Roosevelt was elected on the heels of the Great Depression and all. Mind you, right now I don't have it, but I'm going to go into the terrorist acts and the evidence of facts of them corrupting elections. They've been doing it since the Civil War. In fact, the first time, which if you look this up, that the Democrats tried to steal an election was during the Abraham Lincoln election during the Civil War in 1863, and they did it through mail-in ballots through military enlisted. They tried to pad the election in their favors to steal the election from Abraham Lincoln. That's a fact. And they did the same thing with Lyndon B. Johnson, and they did the same thing with Kennedy. Now, Lyndon B. Johnson, they try to portray off as being the party switch president who gave civil rights to black Americans and healed America. You know, it's a lie. It's all a lie. Lyndon B. Johnson, here, look at the 1864 presidential electoral map. That's incredible, right? Look at that, how blue it is. And I'll tell you what, this is a fact. When you look into the truth and the corruption, with the election of Lyndon B. Johnson, you realize this is the very same thing they did during Donald Trump to get Joe Biden. Whatever process they used during the time, which we know, there's a file on it from Hoover, the FBI agent, uncovered, but obviously too late. Lyndon B. Johnson was already president. His term was already done by the time the evidence emerged to show the corruption and abuse of how they stole the election. Too bad, right? So they got to destroy the nation more. They got the welfare state, the black communities. They got to flip all the blacks over to the Democratic Party, because by this point, the blacks across the nation, their communities have been destroyed. Their school systems were worthless. They were getting no education. They had no idea who they were. They had totally lost their identity. And most of the blacks, because of welfare, of what was about the only thing they could get under Democratic administration. We know with FDR, he ran 3 terms. The guy was another one like King Andy. He tried to rule as like he was a king. And during that time, the poor black Americans of our nation had no chance for anything with all the Klan, all their different terrorist organizations. They beat the blacks down so bad, that's where ghettos started to be formed. That's how the Democrats formed the Democratic Party's ghetto system of the welfare state. It's horrible. But here you can see how much of the state, they try to say, look at how much of the state went Democrat and how much of it was red, only in the southern belt right here. This is what they try to say. But the truth of the matter, when you go forward, you look a little bit further, this right here is a representation of 1960. This was during 1964. Look at that. And this was exactly what they did, was as the files from the FBI agent at the time, so the investigation done shows, they threatened the lives of the electors, they threatened the lives of governors, they threatened the lives of mayors, what have you. They had their Ku Klux Klan and red shirt organizations and all their little terrorist groups out there, full force across the nation. By this point, in the 60s, they had grown huge. They had grown huge, and it's self-evident today they're very huge. Today, they're infiltrated across the nation in every state, county, city, government body in our country right now, and it's self-evident. It's scary. It's scary because we've seen what they did with Joe Biden. They did the same thing they did at this time. Now, how do we know about that? Well, windows into history. Tapes that detail LBJ's stolen election. You see? There's a whole investigative file on this. There's a whole story that's been done on it. The archives hold the records of it. And the reason of it is, like most people don't know, Lyndon B. Johnson was a member of the Ku Klux Klan in Texas. Again, like Robert Byrd, Hugo Black, Wilson, Woodrow Wilson was actually the Grand Wizard. And we know this because there's copies of the revised Claron of the rules of the Ku Klux Klan from 1915. And the person who has to verify and certify that Claron of the rules of the Ku Klux Klan signs it. And the changes and amendments done to the Claron of the Ku Klux Klan in 1915 are signed by Woodrow Wilson. So we know Woodrow Wilson in 1915 was actually the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. This is the facts, people. Here we see an FBI file by Hoover about, this is Lyndon B. Johnson. When we read this FBI file from the Texas, the Kennedy files here, it says, Ned Touchstone, editor of the Council, has been identified by a confident informant as a member of the original Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The source advised in December 1963 that Touchstone claimed that the Klan had documented proof that President Johnson was formerly a member of the Klan in Texas during the early days of his political career. Mind you, Lyndon B. Johnson was still a very strong member. He was, I believe, I can't, they have the Grand Wizard, the Kugel, and he was actually known as like a Cyclops. I think he was a rank of a Cyclops, and that's a little rank you can't get out once you're in that league. You just can't get out. So I mean, the Democrats will tell you, oh, Robert Byrd left, oh, Hugo Black left, oh, Lyndon B. Johnson left. No, you don't leave, and we have examples of people that we know in history who actually did try to leave that were in higher ranking because they had some kind of revival in themselves, and we know some of them from letters they wrote. They professed that they know they were going to be killed, but that it was a revival to the truth of our Lord Christ, that they became Christian in truth, not as a fake Democrat Christian, as a true Christian, and they were totally against the the affliction on black communities and black people, and they seen it, but they got killed. So we know that, and this goes all the way up into the 1970s. I remember actually looking into a matter that took place in 1978 when I was younger. I personally myself was involved in looking into the issue that happened in Pennsylvania. They had killed a guy who had been born again and was a Klan member and understood the truth of the Klan, and he burned his Confederate flag, and he burned his Koran, and he burned his hood and all that. And 3 days later, he was found hung in his town from a tree. As you can see, they don't play. But I'll find the truth on that story so people know it. I'll find the facts in the newspaper, put it up so people can see it. But anyway, here, as you can see, this paper document of the FBI file shows that Lyndon B. Johnson was a member of the Klan. Now here, this is funny with the thing right here with Snoops. I know about this whole thing. They deny it. They say, well, there's no proof of it because we have no actual written record of it. We only have testimony from people who were present that were witnesses who say it, but there's no written proof to back it up. So they say it was unproven because there's no written proof. But Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'll have those niggers voting Democrat for 200 years. This is what he said. And they say it's unproven. But in the basis of that, Republicans have demanded that if Snoop is going to say that's unproven, then we'll submit all the evidence of all the other things he said, and we'll leave it to public opinion to come to their own conclusion if he probably said it or not. So in that case, here we look here. This is a written document that we know because at the time of Lyndon B. Johnson, everything the president would say would be recorded. And then during that time there, the Democrats were very bold in their racism and their elitism and what their goals and intentions were. They were very openly with their KKK. During Lyndon B. Johnson, he had the Ku Klux Klan march down the center of Washington, D.C., all in their garb and their coward committee friggin' uniforms and what have you, all under the protection of the Washington police. It's crazy, right? This guy's a totally civil rights guy. Cut me a break. But he says here, these Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us, since they've got something now they never had before. Now, this is an important thing that he says. I want you to pay close attention because they claim he's the party switch president. They have something they never had before. The political pool to back up their uppiness. Now, we have to do something about this. We have to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. Now, I want to finish reading that down here. Right here, it says here, not enough to make a difference. Then it continues here. For if we don't move at all, then their allies will line up against us, and there'll be no way of stopping them. We'll lose the filibuster, and there'll be no way of putting the brakes on all sorts of wild legislation. It'll be Reconstruction all over again. Now, this is of the Federal Record of Archives. Snoops cannot deny it. They post it because it's a fact. It's what he said. Now, if there was a party switch, who are the allies? Lyndon B. Johnson, the president of the Democratic Party, Democratic Platform Administration. Who is he speaking of? He's speaking of the Republicans. That was the black Americans' ally. We have been allied since the founding of this country. Upon the founding and claiming of independence in the free colony area, there existed by the time of the Civil War 1.6 million free black Americans in the free colonies. And people aren't even aware of this. They were never slaves. They were free blacks. They've always been free in the free United States of America. It was only in the Southern-controlled Democratic Tory area that the blacks were slaves. People just don't even realize this. But this is who he's speaking of. And when, of course, when he speaks of Reconstruction, it was the Republicans who won the Civil War, who drafted the 14th, 15th, and 16th Amendments to give the blacks equal rights as that of all Americans. And that's what a republic is. One people of all equal. We're not black, white, yellow, green, purple, Irish, Scottish, German, nothing. We're Americans, that's it. When we become Americans, you leave all that behind. When you come here from another country and you come here, you don't come here as a Mexican American. You don't come here as a German American. You don't come here as a Russian American. You don't come here as a British American or an African American. You come here to be an American. You become a member of one people of all equal Americans. That's who we are. And you leave the ideology of the totalitarian dictators that you left behind. Okay? Understand. We understand. It's okay to love your culture, your ideology, your people's heritage of traditions. as a people, but not of a political establishment of government. That's what your nation is represented. When you say Germany, you're not really speaking of the people who are Germans. You're speaking of the government that controls it. They're the ones who name it and control it. The people are not German. They're of German descent of the government. When they come to America, they leave Germany. Germany is a place, a dictated place by a controlling communist government or a socialist government or a totalitarian regime or an elitist leader. That's what Germany is. Germany is that place on the earth that is controlled by that German dictator. When you leave there, you're no longer under that control. When you come here, you're an American now. You leave that behind. You assimilate to us. We have assimilation laws. We have that rule that was in our founding principles of who we are. We required that. Okay? And that's what people got to understand. But here, Johnson was practically a connoisseur of the word. According to Johnson's biographer, Robert Carl Johnson would collaborate his pronunciations by regions using Nigra with some Southern legislators and Nigra with others, discussing civil rights legislation with men like Mississippi Democrat James Eastland, who committed most of his life to defending white supremacy. He'd simply call it the Nigger Bill. It's crazy, right? And these, like I was saying, you go to this site, I'll include this link. You go and you read all about Lyndon Johnson and the way he treated black Americans in the White House. He had a chauffeur. There was a chauffeur guy who was, and there was also people who worked that were black Americans in the White House. And, well, you just go ahead and you read it. You'll pretty much clearly see. And pretty much when you come to the point of fact where we know by FBI files and this evidence, it's pretty clear Lyndon B. Johnson was not the party switch guy. So when you prove these facts, because I've been through these arguments with these racist, no-good scumbag traitors to our country, the real heads of the Democrats, and even with Klan members, I've been through these debates with them, and I've nailed them. And then at this point, when you hit them with this, then they go, oh, well, okay, it happened during the Nixon legislation. We're going into Jimmy Carter. This is what they'll tell you. I can't believe it, but this is what they'll tell you. And I remember I had, right here in Florida, one of the heads of the Ku Klux Klan one time we were debating this. He was the first one that tried the Democratic Jimmy Carter card on me. I couldn't believe he tried to pull his card on me. And I said to him, you got to be joking me, right? I said, Jimmy Carter is like worse than Lyndon B. Johnson, because Jimmy Carter was a Ku Klux Klan member out of Georgia. And everybody in Georgia knows this, okay? We know this for a fact. Jimmy Carter put his own money up from his peanut farms for the monument Stone Mountain, okay? When he became president, he put up federal money to complete Stone Mountain right before going to his British loyalist reunion over in frickin' Brazil to celebrate Confederate Flag Day. Are you kidding me? And you know what? That's not my opinion. We're going to go forward, and I'm going to show you. So now, when they say it was Jimmy Carter, there's another thing about Jimmy Carter I remember, because now I'm living at this time, and I'm also a historian at this time. I'm a history buff. I want to know everything, and I know what's going on. This was in 1977-78. The Democrats, if you remember during the Obama administration and leading up to Trump, you had all the Democratic voters of the youth of this country running around wanting to rip down Confederate monuments, not realizing that the Confederate monuments were all Democrats. Yeah. And who put those monuments up? The Democrats. Okay? Woodrow Wilson in 1915 founded the Parks and Recreation. He's the guy who started popping up the Confederate monuments across our country under Democratic administration. Jimmy Carter in 1978, they ran into a problem in New Jersey. They wanted to put a monument of Jefferson Davis in a federal park that was right next to a military, federal military, a monument thing. And the Republicans in New Jersey were like, no, you can't do that. And they argued that, about the case with the Democrats, like that, Lincoln had charged all of the Democrats with treason. Well, and then eventually that charge had to be retracted because you can't charge people who are not citizens of the United States with treason. Most of the Confederate states of the Democrats, the military were either of Tory British descent, of the Tory loyalists, And the majority of those who fought for the Democratic Party in the Confederate Civil War were Frenchmen. So they were not citizens. Most of them, they were found to be citizens where they fled back to, like Canada, and they fled to Brazil, and they fled to Egypt, because that's where they were coming in. The Muslims were sending them in, warriors to fight for them. Canada was sending down French to fight for them, and that's where, and Brazil was sending them, because Brazil still supported slavery too. And they all wound up fleeing to Brazil, Egypt, and Canada upon the conclusion of the Civil War, what most people aren't even aware of. They have what's called Americana Brazil, where the Confederacy reestablished itself, and it still exists to this day. This is the thing, people, like I say, don't die, people. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They're not going to give it up from 248 years of our country, trust me. Well, anyway, back to what I'm saying. The restoration of citizenship rights to Jefferson Davis. Statement on signing Resolution 16 into law in 1978 by Jimmy Carter. This happened. Jimmy Carter pardoned Jefferson Davis in 1978 and granted him citizenship so that his statue could be put up in a federal park in the state of New Jersey in 1978 and other states in Pennsylvania and Virginia. And that's how they got it through. He granted him citizenship and he pardoned him. And this is a fact, because Jimmy Carter is a racist, no-good Klan member out of Georgia. Now, here's Jimmy Carter during the course of many different times in his event visiting the Confederate flag monument. Now, most people might think, well, where's that at in America? Where are they flying that Confederate flag in America? Where they got these monuments? See all these pictures right here? Jimmy Carter with the Confederate flag right here. Here he's at the monument for it. Well, that's not in America. That's in Americana Brazil. That's where the Confederate Democrats went when they lost the Civil War. The heads, 27,000 heads of the prior controlled slave plantation districts in the southern area fled to Brazil, and they took their slaves with them. We have in the Federal Archives the doc records out of Texas, Louisiana, and Alabama that estimate almost 1.7 million black African slaves were boarded among Muslim ships that came in, Islamic Muslim ships that came in, boarded the slaves and took them for the Democratic heads to Brazil, where they relocated, and they founded Americana Brazil, which still exists to this day. And as you can see, Democrat Jimmy Carter, well, he was there, right there. There he is again. There he is again, right there with, Confederate monument. Here's an image of what it looks like in color today. Here you can see they're celebrating Confederate Day. They do reenactments there every year. In their reenactment, the Confederacy wins the war, they overtake America, and it becomes the great slave nation they always wanted. So, that's the way it goes. And as you can see here, this is them celebrating Confederate Day in the Confederate Festival of Brazil. Every year, the Democrats secretly go there and they take part, and they fly their Confederate flags. And like you got the fools and the idiots here in America who think that a Confederate flag is a Southern pride flag. I have news for you. That cross is the sideways cross of St. Christopher of the Tory Loyalist Kingsmen out of Scotland. And the red background represents the loyalty flag of Great Britain. It has nothing to do with America. Get real. Read some history. Learn your place as an American. That flag is a propagated lie by Woodrow Wilson in 1950, who made up the story that it was a battle flag. It's not a battle flag. It's the Confederate national flag of the Confederate slave states. And it still flies today in the Confederate democracy, the socialist democratic democracy of Brazil, in Americana Brazil. So get real, people. Learn the truth and wake up. So now we have here's right here. Each year, the small Brazilian city of Americana throws a huge celebration commemorating the 10,000 Confederates. They say 10,000, it's actually 27,000. We know that for a fact. Confederates who fled the American South after their side lost the Civil War. And they call them Confederates. They're Democrats. They were the Democrats. Okay? Let's call it what it is. And look at that. They paint the big streets and all with the Confederate flag, and they all dress up like, look at this. It's just incredible. And it still goes on to this day. Now, so that's Jimmy Carter in the 70s. So, I've had people say, well, it was after that. Well, I don't know when after that. But they try to say Obama, 2006, when Obama, the first black president, he was not a black president. He's a half white, half black Muslim is what he is. But Hey, that's my opinion. The guy says he's a Christian, whatever. I understand, but my view, my reality, I know enough. In my opinion, he's a Muslim. He's an infiltrated Muslim. He's actually an obedient slave of the Islamic States doing his bidding. And he's treated very, very well for what he's doing. And boy, has he done a great job at destroying this country. But anyway, we see here Robert C. Byrd. Robert C. Byrd is the longest sitting Democratic senator in the history of the country. He died, I believe, in 2011, 12, was it? I believe it was 2012. But anyway, he's the longest sitting president. When he died, I remember, you had Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, everybody came out to praise this man. But the thing with him was he was a Kugel in the Ku Klux Klan. That's a ranking so high that once you reach it, you cannot leave, according to the rules of the Quran. He was the longest sitting Ku Klux Klan member of the Democratic Party in our government as a senator. When he died, here it is right here. Let's see. I got the Wikipedia themselves can't deny the facts because there's too much facts to try and deny it. Robert C. Byrd, U.S. Senator, West Virginia, recruiter for the Klan while in his 20s and 30s, rising to the title of Klugel. See it? Yeah, it's right there. It says it right there. An exalted cyclops of his local chapter. These are levels so high that by the rules of the Quran are pretty clear. If you want out, there's only one way. They kill you. Robert Byrd died of natural causes in 2012. He wasn't killed by the Klan, so he was still obviously a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, what I'm trying to say is there was no possible party switch because we see here, this is 14 years ago, so 2010, I guess it was, he died. And this right here is Secretary Clinton, Hillary Clinton herself, and who is very aware of all the Democrats. She's a true Democrat.
The country has lost a true American original, my friend and mentor, Robert C. Byrd. Senator Byrd was a man of surpassing eloquence and nobility, and I will remember him for many things, but most of all, for a heartfelt comment he made to me in the dark days following the attack on our country on 9/11.
Hillary Clinton goes to praise this man as her mentor and hero of the Democratic Party. I'll put a link to this, or you can pull it up yourself on YouTube and watch her praises of Robert Byrd, knowing he was a Klan member. Now, how you say, well, how does she know? Well, I'll tell you what, because the next video I want to show you is one of no other than her husband defending Robert Byrd's Klan position and pretty much saying that the reason he was in the Klan was because he wanted to be elected, which he makes pretty clear that if Robert Byrd wanted to maintain his position in the Democratic Party's Senate, he had a greater chance if he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan in Virginia. Pay attention.
They mentioned that he once had a fleeting association with a Ku Klux Klan. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. He was a country boy from the hills and hollows of West Virginia. He was trying to get elected. And maybe he did something he shouldn't have done, and he spent the rest of his life making it up. And that's what a good person does.
Well, that's some bullshit right there. But Bill Clinton just pretty much said that Robert Byrd trying to get elected was the reason he was in the Ku Klux Klan. Now, Robert Byrd was a Cyclops and a Kugel of a high rank. The only way that you hold those positions and get out of the Klan is you die. They kill you. If you try to leave and say you don't want to be, you know too much, you're in too deep, there's no out. That's the rules of the Ku Klux Klan. The FBI knows this, the CIA knows this, the federal government knows this fact. There's no way out. Okay? Robert Byrd, to the day he died, was a Klansman. And that's a fact. I don't care what anybody says, it's a fact. If you read the Quran of the Ku Klux Klan rules, you know it's a fact. Okay? And Bill Clinton's defending him, so we know Hillary Clinton knows it. We know they both know it because he's talking about it. And according to him, if you want to get elected in the Democratic Party, your chances are better if you're in the Ku Klux Klan. If you want, we'll just listen to that one more time.
That's what a good person does. And that's what a good person does. There are no, and that's what spent the rest of his life, and he shouldn't have done, and maybe he did something to get elected. Hollows of West Virginia means he was a country boy from the. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. Ku Klux fleeting association with a Ku Klux Klan. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. He was a country boy from the hills and hollows of West Virginia. He was trying to get elected. and maybe
Yeah, right. He was trying to get elected. So pretty much he's saying if you want to get elected in the Democratic Party, your chances are better if you're in the Ku Klux Klan. I didn't say it. Bill Clinton said it, just so you know. So now as we go forward here, now Jimmy Carter is very highly respected by all members today of the Democratic Party. Hillary, Bill Clinton, all of them except for Barack Obama. Barack Obama knows who to rub elbows with, who not to, and he's an obedient slave to the Islamic States, in my opinion. He's a Muslim who's doing his bidding, as like Anthony Johnson would have done, or one of the other blacks who used to be a slave owner. You know, that's what he is. He's just looking out for himself. And but here you got Jimmy Carter. President Carter visits Stone Mountain. Now Jimmy Carter, in those pictures I show you prior, where he was at Brazil celebrating Confederate Day with the Confederate flag, in 1972 he put up his own money to help complete Stone Mountain. And then when he became president, he used federal money to complete Stone Mountain. And before departing, when those pictures were taken of him over there, which, mind you, oddly, there used to be pictures of like Lyndon B. Johnson there. FDR was there. Woodrow Wilson frequented it a lot of times. He was there. And these pictures are the box that all the pictures originals were found in to be uploaded and scanned. Seems to have been gone missing. But the only ones that were found were the ones of Jimmy Carter. And but I'm sure that box is going to come up somewhere. It's going to come up with all the other members, so you realize how long-standing they've been celebrating their long-standing history over there in the Confederate state of Americana, Brazil. It's now the Socialist Democratic State of Confederacy in Brazil. They changed in 2020 to the Socialist Democratic Confederacy over there. But anyway, this is Jimmy Carter visiting Stone Mountain. And this was in 5 years ago. So 2019, before, he was there. And he was there, he paid to have it pressure cleaned because he was paying tribute to his heritage as a Democrat. So obviously, still at this point, we know during the inauguration thing in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, when he came in, he was there with Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, all the other Democrats, and to this day, the Democrats right now are all praying for him and this, that, and everything, because he's, on his deathbed right now in Georgia. I think he still is, unless he died this weekend. But and he's very highly respected in the Democratic Party, considered to be a founding father of the modern Democratic Party today. And obviously, there's no party switch because, well, he's still honoring the Confederate monuments, and he's still upholding to the Confederate slave states in the Democratic Party. So I mean, it's just it becomes pretty self-evident. So let's see. Another organization was the White League attacks on black voters. This is another one I just wanted to touch base. Like I say, in truth, what people got to understand, and then now we're concluded. What people got to understand is that the Democratic Party is the longest-standing domestic terrorist organization in the United States. Since the founding of this country, they were the British Loyalists. They're the ones who formed the Democratic Party in 1828. They're the ones who created the Ku Klux Klan, the White Knights, all of. I mean, it's just amazing how many different they got. So many different organizations. The Ku Klux Klan, Freedom Summer. This was another. The White League. We go back. We've seen the Red Shirts. I mean, it's just an ongoing criminal organization, terrorist groups that have been, terrorizing and causing civil upset and division in our country since the founding of our country. Real quick, I'm going to close on something I don't have up to give everybody something to consider. And this is at the conclusion of the Civil War. I wasn't expecting to do this part. It's just a last-minute thing I'm going to do. The truth of the Civil War and why they killed Abraham Lincoln. When you do your due diligence and deep research into it, you find out it was because of what was known as the Wade Davis Bill. Let's see if I can find it. The Wade Davis bill, Reconstruction Bill, would have abolished slavery, but it required that 50% of states' white males take a loyal oath to the United States and swear that they had never assisted the Confederacy to be readmitted to the Union. Okay, now, the Wade Davis bill also was pocket vetoed by Abraham Lincoln in 1864, right before they killed him. He pocket vetoed the bill because he had told them also he wanted, now if you remember, Abraham Lincoln did the House Divided speech. And what the House Divided speech was in reference to was that of the original founding Republican Party of the guaranteed Republican form of government of the United States as a single party system was how the country was founded. Abraham Lincoln was referencing the thing of the Democratic Party becoming the dividing factor of our nation. And what he wanted in the Wade Davis bill was strong language that dissolved the Democratic Party, banned it from the United States, and removed it from our government. And as you can see here, as it states, he wanted anyone, because also we knew there was many Southern Americans who were forced to have to adhere to the Confederacy or be hung. And we know this, for example, we have what's called the Great Hanging in Gainesville, Texas, that took place. And this was an example of what happened to Southern Americans if they did not adhere to the Confederate Democrats. They would hang you. On this day, they did a sweep of what they knew were loyal Southern Americans who adhered to the Republic of the Constitutional Free United States. And what they did was they went and they gathered them up, they convicted them of treason against the Democratic Party's Confederate slave states, and they hung them. This is what they did to real Southern Americans, okay? And most people just don't know this because it's been hidden. But this is the Great Hanging of Gainesville, Texas. People need to look it up and realize it. And then what Lincoln was going to do for those who he knew were real Americans, but subject to the Democratic democracy of the Confederate slave states of the Democrats, they wanted to. They were, you know. Of course, we had when we won the war. There's a lot of people saying I was not with them. I had no choice. They would have killed me, my family, my kids. Because you see those men hung in those trees in the Great Hanging. If you do your due diligence on the story, you'll find out after they hung these men, they went to the houses, they dragged out their wife and children, executed them on the front lawns, burned their houses down and left them there as a warning so people knew. The Democratic Party is an inhumane, soulless, godless people. And you need to realize the truth of their history and who they are. Because I assure you, 248 years of our American history has not erased their 1,000 years of totalitarian rule and dictatorship of the royal elitist monarchy bullshit that they have. These people believe they're better than everybody. What they're doing is they're dividing our nation. And the most of the people that are in the Democratic Party you think it's a party of unity. I ask you again, where is the unity? They got gays divided against straights. They got Muslims divided against Christians. Christian Protestants divided against Christian Catholics. Christian Episcopalians divided against Christian Protestants. They've got whites against blacks. They've got Polish against friggin' German. They got German against Jews. They got now Russian against Ukrainian. Where is the unity? These people divide everybody up, cause all kinds of civil uprising disturbance, and then they keep pointing fingers at the Republicans. All the crime issues, the police brutality, where's it taking place? Democratic-controlled cities and communities. And when you realize that there's no Republicans there, so how do you blame the Republicans for this stuff? People, you got to wake up. You got to learn the truth. Our nation is greatly at threat. And again, like I said, the whole purpose of this was to understand they are literally now using social media, the news media, movies, you name it. They're using everything. And even, like I say, the founder of Wikipedia himself is stating that he has realized that Wikipedia has been hijacked by the left and that they're propagating the left with lies. And even he can no longer trust his own site because it's so infiltrated by them and they're confounded. And I see what they're doing. This whole deal with the Democratic Republican Party is a lie. No such party ever existed. Now, if you do a search for the Republican Party on Google, from 1888 or 1788 for the Jefferson Republican Party, it comes up as the Democratic Republican Party. The Republican Party originated in Congress to oppose the nationalism and economically intervention policies of Alexander Hamilton. That's not true either. I mean, they twist things up. You see, but they're titling it the Democratic Republican Party. This is not the truth. Now, here's the point where I want to point out, now I know from arguments with me from back then, they do have to put this statement. But the statement, most of the Democratic youth today, the young kids, they don't do their due diligence, they just take what they're told. And I'm hearing a lot of the young kids right now saying, the Republican and Democrats have always been the same because they're seeing this. And this is what they're being led to believe, and it's a lie. But here, it says the Republican Party, retroactively called the Democratic Republican Party, American term created by modern historians and political scientists. So understand, this is a new term, now newly being applied to the Jefferson-Madison Republican Party, which that title never ever existed. Now the scary thing about it is, when you go to Wikipedia now and you type in presidents of the United States, okay, and you find it here on the list of presidents. I wanted to see if it, yeah. Now you look here, John Adams was, it says George Washington unaffiliated. That's not true. He is a Republican. John Adams was a Republican Federalist. This is true. Thomas Jefferson was a VP. Democratic Republic. Look at this. Thomas Jefferson, they got as a Democratic Republican. James Madison, Democratic Republican. James Monroe, Democratic Republican. This is a lie, people. There was no Democratic Republican Party in that time. It was simply the Republican Party of the Constitutional Republic of these free Constitution of the United States. There was no democracy, or Democratic association or affiliation with the founding of the United States of America. We are strictly a constitutional republic. We are not a democratic republic. Okay? This is a lie. And we need to face this reality. We need to do something. We need to all take our places as Americans, step up, and start demanding that this propagating of lies and twisting of our American history be stopped right now by these evil, godless people as the Democratic Party. And pretty much that's about where I'm at. That's what I got to say. And we'll lead off with that. That's my video. That's my information. I'll include links when I post this on Facebook. I'll include the links all below it, and on my YouTube channel as well. I'll include all the links that I've showed or I've reviewed and in here, so you can all take the time in your free time to go educate yourself and do your due diligence and understanding the truth of American history. And with that said, I thank you all for your time to watch my video. I appreciate if anybody wants to comment, if anybody wants to debate this. I'm open to debate. I'm trying to figure out a way. I've gone through a lot of changes in the last 4 years. It's been a very complicated time, a lot of major changes. I've been under not only attack on social media for my views and opinions, but in my personal life and my business life as well. There's been a lot of big major changes, but I'm still standing. And I plan on still going forward. And by the grace of God and certain people, and including my family, I've made it to this day. And I'm going to continue forward, and I'm going to continue trying to do my best to make the truth known for the sake of my grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews, and my family. So with that said, God bless America. God bless our future President, Donald Trump. May God always protect him. May God always protect our Republic of these United States. We are a Christian-founded nation. I love my Lord Jesus Christ. I love our nation. And I pray God put his hand upon us and direct us back to that of the way, of the truth, the light, and our God, Christ. All right? Thank you all for your time again, and I will see you next time.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. thank my lucky stars to be living here today. 'Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American,